Now, there are absolutely loads of new and updated retro motorcycles on the market for 2025, so here we go with my pick of the best, and we're going in price order ascending. Honda's GB350S gets us started at the more affordable end of the market, coming in at just under $4,000, and it's got to be said it looks like a decent amount of bike for the money. Their 350 air-cooled singles have been available in some Asian markets for a couple of years now, but this one, well, it's the first variant to be launched in the UK and Europe. You see, Enfield's 350s have been selling really well over the past few years, especially here in the UK, and so it's got to be said, with a fairly similar spec, it seems like this is Honda's attempt to muscle in on some of those sales. Now, it's not particularly powerful at just over 20 horsepower and 29 Nm of peak torque, but it should be nice and easy to ride at 178 kilograms curb and 800mm in the seat height, and you get a reasonably well-spec'd chassis for the price, along with LED lighting and switchable traction control. Arguably though, I think the biggest appeal of this bike will be the looks, with that typical Honda level of detail and design, and a tasteful blend of like classic proportions but with modern bits of finish. Personally, I only wish they'd been a little bit more ballsy with the paint jobs, with just a bog standard black on offer of course, and then a blue and a grey which look remarkably similar and also quite subdued. The same criticism though could rarely be levelled at Royal Enfield, who almost always offer a wide spectrum of vibrant paint schemes for most of their models, and the Gorilla 450, which is kinda new for 2025, is no different. This one will certainly catch the eye at first glance, but look a little bit deeper, and there's also plenty more to like. You see, the rudiments are shared with the Himalayan 450, and so you've got the same liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine, and it makes about double the pep of their air-cooled counterparts at just under 40 horses peak. Then you've also got a nice open riding position which gives it a little bit of that big bike feel, and I'm also a big fan of their new round TFT display, which I think really nicely balances a little bit of modern functionality and yet some timeless design. So look, for about £5,000 it's a pretty good offering. The only thing I will say is I'd also recommend testing out the Triumph Speed 400 if you're looking at this bike, which also comes in at around the same price point and offers a little bit more refinement and finish. In at $6,500 though, we've got another Enfield here, and this time it's their new classic 650, which I think is going to be sorely tempting for anyone looking for a retro that looks a bit more authentically traditional. The oversized spoke wheels, the single seat setup, the headlight nacelle and the classic chrome finish all contribute to the look of a bullet from the 50s, and to the non-biker and the untrained eye, I'd say it's pretty much only the disc brakes that give it away as a, brand new bike, and maybe the lack of rust. So yeah, definitely expect the classic to sell well this year, as the 650 Enfields always tend to, but the real big hitter in the retro market for 2025, I reckon, is going to be this one, the Bear 650. Again, this one's built upon their air-cooled 650 parallel twin platform, so a super sweet engine with loads of soul. It makes around 45 horsepower. Very similar to the Interceptor Retro all-rounder, this one, but it's just been given a bit of that Scrambler treatment with a little bit more travel in the suspension, some semi-knobbly tyres, high and wide handlebars, a 2-in-1 exhaust system, and generally just a bit more of a rugged look. For me, I think this one might now be one of the best looking bikes in the current Enfield lineup, alongside the Continental GT Cafe Racer. And then another little sweetener is the fact that you also get that excellent round TFT display that started life on the 450s. But I think, more than any of that, the starting price of £6,749, especially in the current economic climate, is gonna make this bike very appealing to a lot of riders. And for reference, other retro Scrambler style bikes like the Triumph 900 or the Ducati Scrambler, well, they start more so around the £10,000 mark. There is an element of you get what you pay for though. The Triumph Retros are some of my favourites on the market, with a higher level of performance and finish that I think can justify the extra spend if you can stretch to it. The entry point into the Bonneville lineup is the Speed Twin 900, formerly known as the Street Twin, and this one has had a substantial update for 2025 with a much more sporty image. So while the engine's the same with the 900 parallel twin, the chassis has been tweaked with an upside down fork, piggyback shocks and a new radial front brake caliper, just to give it a bit more of a responsive feel out on the road. Then, the tech has also been improved with lean-sensitive rider aids, a new digital dash, and also the option to fit their Bluetooth connectivity module, and it's all wrapped up in a more chiseled, aggressive styling package that I think perfectly suits its new personality. This one has been their best-selling Bonneville over the past few years, and with this update, I fully expect it to continue to be so. Now, before we get into the next bike, I just want to say a massive thanks to Flying Eyes for supporting the channel and sponsoring this video. Flying Eyes make these awesome flexible glasses and sunglasses, which are just a millimeter thick at the arms, and so the idea is that they massively reduce pressure around the temples when they're worn inside your helmet. If you've ever had that spectacle-induced headache on a longish ride, then I'd thoroughly recommend checking these out because they're so comfortable that you barely notice you're wearing them. On top of that though, they're super robust and flexible, and so if you do need to stick them in your pocket when you're taking your helmet off, there's absolutely no worries about them getting bent or damaged. And also, they offer a wide range of colors and shapes and styles to suit all head sizes and faces. I absolutely love wearing mine, and so that's why you'll see me wearing them in pretty much every video. And so I thoroughly recommend checking out the link down in the description below to find out more. And you'll also find down there a discount code specifically for our viewers for 10% off anything you buy. So once again, a massive thanks to Flying Eyes for their support and for making videos like this one possible. Now next up, we've got Ducati at just under £10,000 with the return of their Scrambler Icon Dark, which was previously available as a simple, affordable take on their Scrambler platform with slightly cheaper finishing parts and also a completely blacked out paint job. Thing is though, a year or so back, they actually dropped this model when they announced a major overhaul of the Scrambler lineup, and so it's great to see it back again for 2025. With this one, you get the same peachy air-cooled L-twin engine as the previous generation, along with that lightweight and easy-to-ride chassis, but then also inherits all of the new stuff from the latest generation Scramblers, like the much-improved ride-by-wire throttle, which opens up a couple of riding modes, and also the new TFT display. This one is absolutely ideal if you want a Ducati at the lowest possible price, or if you're planning to customize it anyway and you just want a basic blank canvas to start from. One of my favorite new bikes though from EICMA this year has to be this new Moto Gsy V7 Sport, which I think looks absolutely fantastic in this lime green paint job. The V7 has always been one of my favorite retro bikes with some proper V-twin sole, beautiful Italiano styling, and then also some surprisingly practical features like the shaft drive and a massive fuel tank. But new for 2025, this V7 Sport has been put on steroids, and so there's more power and torque from the 853cc transverse V-twin, a new upside-down fork, twin Brembo front brakes, lean-sensitive rider aids, a sport riding mode, and more. So look, it should offer a lot of the same character and riding experience of the existing V7 that I like so much, but just with a bit more get up and go, which is always a good thing in my book. Now, there's no official price on this one as of yet, but I'd expect it to be about £1,000 more than the regular V7 Stone. And I think of all the bikes on this list, this is probably the one that I'm most excited to get hold of and review in the next few months. Now, we make one of these retro videos pretty much every year, and there are always a few complaints in the comments about my definition of retro and as to whether some of the bikes included should be on the list or not. And I think this one, the new Vitpillen 801 from Husqvarna, well, I have to admit, it probably is pushing the boundaries a bit. You see, it's a more stylish interpretation of the KTM 790 Duke, with Husqvarna and KTM being sister companies. And while it might not look particularly old school, I think the minimal design language and the round headlight and daytime running light might be enough to get it on the radar of anyone who's looking for something a little more tasteful than your average modern day naked bike. With a proper lively 790 parallel twin making just over 100 horsepower, fully adjustable WP Apex suspension, lightweight 17-inch wheels front and rear, and all the techie settings you could ever want, this is definitely one to look at if you fancy something that goes quick but does it in style. Now, every year, try and attempt to keep the Bonneville lineup fresh with a special edition paint scheme, like the Gold Line editions, the Chrome editions, and also the Stealth editions, which they had on last year. For 2025, though, they've come up with this, the Icon editions, which takes inspiration from one of the oldest variations of the Triumph logo, which you'll see featured along the side of the tank of each of these models. On top of that, you also get some Icon Edition logos dotted around the bike, as well as a different dedicated classic paint scheme for each of the bikes, and this one's available on the Scrambler 900, T100, T120, the Scrambler 1200s, and also the Bobber and the Speedmaster. Personally though, I think it suits the more traditional looking bikes the best, like the T100 and the T120, and as usual with these Bonneville editions, it won't be limited in terms of numbers, but just in terms of time, so these will only be available for the 2025 model year. For an Icon Edition, you'll pay an extra 600 quid on top of the standard bike for the 900s and 800 quid on top of the standard price for the 1200s. Now another slightly dubious entrant here is the Yamaha XR900, which is heavily based upon their thoroughly modern MT-09 Naked, and so yeah, admittedly a lot of the bike doesn't exactly look super retro, but the top half with the round headlight, the bar end mirrors, the 80s inspired tank and side panels and seat hump, well they do throw it back a bit to bikes of that era, and I think personally it offers something a lot more palatable and visually pleasing than the super angular styling of the MT. For 2025, this one gets a couple of tweaks with a much improved bigger TFT display and also an updated quick shifter, and with almost 120 horsepower on tap from that brilliant CP3 inline triple, well this is another one to definitely consider if you want a retro that biases heavily towards modern day performance. Another Scrambler from Ducati makes the list, this time with a little more flair and finish than the Icon Dark, with the slightly flat track inspired full throttle. For me, the lower handlebars on this version make it feel much more sporty than the Icon, and also the standard fit quick shifter and Termini silencer both help too. 2025 though brings a new paint job for this one with a more subtle looking black and bronze that replaces the quite vivid red and black of the previous year model. Thing is though, for another 1300 quid you might also want to consider Triumph's heavily updated Speed Twin 1200, which also comes in a new top of the range RS variant for 2025. The styling is fresh, the tech is upgraded too, and the RS gets the best of the best in terms of chassis spec, with Brembo style Lemma brakes up front and Öhlins piggyback shocks at the rear. I've been lucky enough to ride both of these bikes on the press launch recently, and I will say that both have their place, with the standard bike making for a slightly better balanced sporty all-rounder, whilst the RS is a bit more aggressive and better suited to quicker riding. The only downside for a lot of Speed Twin fans is that new digital dash that replaces the much loved twin analog clocks, and the fact that that RS model now comes in at a fairly hefty 14.5 grand. Having ridden it though, I will say there are few retros that can offer such a tantalizing blend of looks, quality, character, handling and tech, and I'll definitely be looking to get one again this year for a longer loan to enjoy it some more. Clearly not satisfied with two Scramblers though this year, Ducati have also partnered with high-end Italian parts manufacturer Rizoma to also release this special edition that will cost you just over £13,000. And it won't be particularly different to ride, but what you do get is a minimal, almost Husqvarna-esque finish, and as you'd expect, it's covered in bespoke Rizoma bits which are finished in a sort of rose gold. Personally, I think I probably prefer the looks of that full throttle, but if you fancy getting something a little more exclusive and you like this semi-futuristic look, then 13 grand actually ain't that bad for a limited edition Ducati, especially when you consider that there's just 500 planned for production. Another special edition though that I do rather like the look of for 2025 is the new Triumph Bobber TFC, which follows on from other previous TFC models like the Thruxton or the Rocket or the previous Bobber. TFC stands for Triumph Factory Custom, so it's basically what their designers and engineers can come up with if they're given a bit more budget to bling them out. And this one gets a dedicated TFC paint job, clip-on style handlebars, an Öhlins fork and shock, Brembo monoblock brakes, and a Kropovich silencer, and also the all-important gold chain. Personally, I think this one looks absolutely fantastic, and while 17 grand is undoubtedly a lot of money at about 4 grand more than a standard Bobber, well this one doesn't at all feel like a gimmicky special edition, with loads of tangible improvements to the components and spec across the entire bike. Top of the list though, at just under 18.5 grand, is this absolute beauty from BMW. It's called the R12S, and as you might expect, it's heavily based upon their R12 retro platform, but with this striking orange fade paint job to reference the sporty boxers of yesteryear. we've got a full video about this one, so I'll put it on the screen now so you can give it a click and give it a watch if you haven't already. And also, I'd love to know from you down in the comments below which of the bikes on the list today has caught your eye. Do hit subscribe if you want to see more of the latest motorcycle news and reviews right here on MOTOBOB. And massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.